Hi, just another quick one. Well, a series again, because it'd be too long if I did them all in one. This one's on the fair use. Before we start, it's for educational purposes. Like I said, it applies to the person. I'm not a person. I'm a man, individual, not part of any group or anything like that. Don't pigeonhole me. It's the zero sum bias. When people think that everything is a competition, right? Like all these debates you've got in this subject that we're looking into now and everything else, shape of the earth and stuff. There's all these debates that are being pushed, a false dichotomy, us versus them mentality, and that it's a zero sum bias. Everyone thinks it's a competition. The zero sum bias is a cognitive bias that causes people to mistakenly view certain situations as being zero sum, meaning that they incorrectly believe that one party's gains are directly balanced by other party's losses. For example, zero-sum bias can cause people to think that there is competition for a resource that they feel is limited, in situations where the resource in question is actually unlimited and freely available. This bias can shape people's thinking and behaviour in a variety of situations, both on an individual scale as well as on a societal one. So it's important to understand it. As such, in the following article, you will learn more about the zero-sum bias, understand why people experience it, and see what you can do in order to reduce its influence. Understanding the zero-sum bias. Because the zero-sum bias causes people to believe that for one individual to gain something, someone else must lose something equivalent. This bias encourages belief in an antagonistic nature of social relationships. It can generally be said to affect people on two scales. The individual scale. This means that the zero-sum bias causes people to mistakenly assume that there is intra-group competition for a certain resource between them and other members of a certain social group. Group scale. This means that the zero-sum bias causes people to mistakenly assume that there is inter-group competition for a certain resource between their group and other groups. It's important to keep in mind that there are, of course, situations that are indeed zero-sum, meaning that any gains by one party are directly balanced by the losses of other parties. However, the issue with the zero-sum bias is that it causes people to believe that situations are zero-sum when that's not actually the case. Note, the zero-sum bias is sometimes referred to as the zero-sum heuristic or zero-sum intuition. In addition, note that the zero-sum bias is a psychological phenomenon, while the more basic concept of zero-sum games is based on economics and game theory. Examples of the zero-sum bias. There are many situations and ways in which people display the zero-sum bias. For example, consumers often have a zero-sum approach when they assess different products, since people tend to assume that if a product is superior in one dimension, then it must be inferior in other dimensions. This means, for instance, that people might assume that if a phone is durable, then it will have poor battery life performance. Or they might assume that if a product is designated as environmentally friendly, then it will have poor durability. Zero-sum bias can also affect how people view trades and exchanges, in situations where it causes them to mistakenly assume that there must always be one individual who benefits more from making a trade, even in situations where both parties benefit to an equal degree, but in different ways. This means, for instance, that people might assume that when someone sells someone else a service or a product, either the seller or the buyer must be losing as a result of the exchange. In addition, the zero-sum bias can also affect people's thinking on a larger societal scale. For example, people sometimes view membership in social groups as being zero-sum, meaning that belonging to one social group excludes you from being a member of a different group. I won't be part of any groups anyway, because they can be influenced and what they call it, infiltrated and stuff. People sometimes view gender hierarchies in the workplace as being zero-sum, which can cause them to be more opposed to gender-fair policies. People sometimes believe that there is an inherent zero-sum competition between different ethnic groups, which can cause them to develop negative attitudes towards immigrants. People sometimes view racism as a zero-sum game, meaning that they believe that decrease in racism against one group will be balanced by an increase in racism towards other groups, which can make them more likely to oppose anti-racism policies. Right, I'm going to go on to the next one. Will be why people experience the zero-sum bias. Okay, thank you. Bye.